Welcome to CPXL. This podcast of CrossPoint Church is designed to encourage you to go further and grow deeper. CrossPoint is a rural multi-site church committed to taking the gospel to every place and everyone. You can access all CrossPoint resources at crosspointchurch.com. But now, let's join this episode of CPXL with your host, Pastor Andy Addis.
And the wonderful Mrs. Addis. How are you doing this fine summer day?
I'm good.
If you're listening to this and it's not summer, it's because you're listening to an older recording. But
fair.
If you're right on top of it as we release, we are in the midst of the first real heat of the summer, and you got your Jeep back. Are you a happy lady?
I did, yes. It is so fun. It's hot, but it is so fun.
It is an old Jeep with a hard top that we take off with great stress and duress.
And once it's off, it's off.
It's off for the summer.
Yep,
That's right.
Yep.
But it has had a few little issues, and it's been away from you, but now it's got a new clutch, master and slave cylinder. It's got
flywheel.
Oh, it's got everything.
Right. Booster, something or the other.
Yeah, the list was long.
Yeah. Bless her heart.
And if you ever need help parsing a Greek verb, I'm your guy. If you need help putting a Jeep together, you're going to have to take it to somebody.
We know a guy.
That's right.
But yeah, it's been very fun and super excited.
So the
very
girl
grateful.
of summer is back, is what we're saying.
Yeah, so when I look like a crazy person with my hair all over the place and sunburn on my forehead, it's because I've been driving.
And you're loving it.
Loving it.
Speaking of loving it, here we are in the midst of another season of CPXL, where we are studying the New Testament together. If you're a part of CrossPoint, you know we're in a reading plan. I want to encourage all of you to be a part of that, because this reading plan just puts us together on the same page. Go to crosspointchurch.com/reading plan. Pretty hard to find. And you can join with us. It's a date-based thing. You don't have to catch up. Just start where we are. And we are wrapping up the book of Galatians. And so for a couple of issues of this podcast, we're going to stay in the book of Galatians. When we get to these shorter letters, the New Testament survey starts going really fast, and there's a lot more you'd want to get to. So this is an example of why it's important for us to do something like this. And I've entitled this particular lesson out of Galatians chapter 1, verses 6 through 10, Only One Gospel. This is a theologically rich subject, and it's not one of our practical lessons on living life. It's one of those, as a believer, that you have to get this down. And there's some stuff in this that is powerful enough that I'm actually... This is hopefully interesting. I shared a good chunk of this with our location pastors, but I think it's important enough that we want to share it with everybody else too. Sound good?
Yeah. I remember going through this when we did, what was it called? When you and I went through Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians.
Oh,
remember that?
Yeah, I do.
It was over...
Do we do this part of it?
I
think we did all of Galatians.
Yeah, we did all of Galatians, and it was a really good study. So
can I just say,
really
this is not Bible study. I'm not old. I'm older.
You're older,
right? There's a difference between being old and older.
That's right. Now we're the same age, so you're not old.
That's right. You have officially had your catch-up birthday. But because of that, and been in ministry, been preaching, been in the same church for 24 years, I realize there's some books, if I'm going to be in them, I have talked to you about this before.
That's true.
You know what I mean? There's no getting around it.
Yeah.
So if you're one of those long timers that we've been together for a while, you should have this by now. I'm just kidding.
At least have heard it.
Yes, at least we're in the same place. So let's read Galatians chapter 1, verses 6-10. You do in the New Living, and I will do in the ESV. Actually, let me start this time. I always make you start, so I'll start this time.
Okay.
Here's what it says. I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. Not that there is another one, but there are some who trouble you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one which we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. Now, in the New Living Translation, same verses.
I am shocked that you are turning away so soon from God, who called you to himself through the loving mercy of Christ. You are following a different way that pretends to be the good news, but it is not the good news at all. You are being fooled by those who deliberately twist the truth concerning Christ. Let God's curse fall on anyone, including us or even an angel from heaven, who preaches a different kind of good news than the one we preach to you. I say again what we have said before. If anyone preaches any other good news than the one than the one you welcomed, let that person be cursed. Obviously, I'm not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. If pleasing people were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant.
It's powerful stuff. Again, I'm titling this particular lesson, Only One Gospel, and I think that's easy enough to see why we call it that. And I have 3 kind of breakdowns for this passage. Focusing on verses 6 and 7, I want to just focus on the fact that Paul talks about another gospel. And what in the world is he talking about? Is he talking about a whole other system? Yeah, there are other religions, and there are others that claim to, or other faith systems that claim to be salvific in nature. But that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about Christianity. He's talking about the gospel of Jesus Christ, but with additives and takeaways.
So Jesus and.
Or Jesus less. Right? Yeah. And so he's saying that you can tell in this passage there's some corruption in the church. There are teachers coming in and they are changing the gospel. And because of that, it's the additives and the takeaways that make it a different gospel.
Okay.
I love this part. He is astonished. Mindset is astonished. What did yours say?
Shocked.
He is shocked. In other words, what is wrong with you, McFly?
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this. We've prayed about this. We've seen God
once.
move in your heart and in your life, and he is astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Christ, turning to a different gospel. But then he goes on to say, not that there is another one. In other words, that's really important. When you add to or take from, it's no longer the gospel. Right?
Don't mess with it.
Well, gospel is basically an English translation of a Greek word, eungalizio, for evangelism. But gospel means,
The good news.
Yeah, it's good news. That's all it is. And it's no longer good news if you take from it or you add to it. But there are some who trouble you and want to distort. There's the word. They're distorting the gospel. Thanks be to God, this only happened 2,000 years ago. And it never happens today, right?
Sadly.
Well,
sadly it does.
So what are some things? The additives. How do you add to the gospel and make it a gospel that's no longer a gospel? Well, what was going on in the Galatian church is that they said that you're adding, you must be circumcised to also be a believer. So if you're a Gentile coming in and you weren't a Jew first, now you have to be circumcised. And then maybe you have to observe the Sabbath laws, the daily, the weekly, the annual, the monthly, the seasonal, the yearly. It's legalism. And so maybe we don't have that trouble. Maybe in church today they're not going, hey, if you don't fulfill the festival of booths, you're not a real Christian. I've never heard that before.
I don't think that's a real common thing anymore.
But I have heard this. If you wear that kind of clothes, you're not a Christian. If you listen to this kind of music, you're not a Christian. You have to do it this way. You have to read this pastor's book and do this kind of theology. And they start adding things in and heaping up heavy weights on you. And they forget that it's by grace and grace alone that you've been saved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to be careful. If there are churches or ministries, and we have to be careful ourselves that we don't start saying, it's Jesus and this level of behavior. It's Jesus and this thing that you have to, it's Jesus and this offering that you have to make. Because none of that is true.
Right.
But on the flip side, what would be some takeaways? I bet we could do this together. In the modern church today, there are probably innumerable examples of how people try and create what we call an easy believism that, oh no, God's love and grace is all over you. You don't need to worry about any of that stuff. He just loves you. And we take the gospel and we start taking pieces from it. The good news, we start taking the law and taking pieces from it. Any examples that you can think of? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Let's see. To take away from, like, Well, the top 10. I mean, when he says that to
like the 10 Commandments you're
yeah,
talking about.
right, the top 10. To honor your father and mother, and like that's
Yeah, you don't have any responsibilities there anymore. You're a child of God.
right, and
Jesus even spoke against that. How dare you say that all my money goes to God? I can't help my parents.
yeah,
Even Jesus said that was a problem back in the day.
yeah,
What about some of these things though? I'm covered by grace, so my sexuality is who God made me to be, even though the Bible clearly says X, Y, and Z. Or I have I want to do this with my entertainment life, and I know that this music doesn't honor God, or these TV shows honor God, but I'm covered by grace, and so
and it's not as bad as it could be.
right.
I mean,
And so we just start loosening things and enlarging grace in a way that's a disproportionate, that's a disgusting use of grace. Because Paul says in Romans, since we're covered by grace,
should we go on sinning?
should we go on sinning? And then his response is, by no means.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And so the gospel is the free gift of God. It is the grace of Jesus Christ to cover us. But it does not change the nature of God. So you can't add to it because you can't make it any more salvific. I love that word today.
You
right?
do like that word. It's a fun word.
And you can't take away from it and keep its inherent value. You're preaching another gospel. You're creating something else by adding to it or taking from it.
And I don't think we as people today see it that way. They think, well, we just have to love everybody, period. Well, yeah, Jesus loved everybody, but it doesn't mean that everything they do is okay. And so it's like the enemy is so good at manipulating us and to trying to shove Jesus into a box that we can understand.
Right.
And making the gospel more complicated or too simplistic.
Yeah, you go both directions. You add to or take from it, and you're missing the very essence of it. So what you're getting at, I don't know if CPXL listeners know this. Did you know we're grandparents?
Thanks for including me on that this time, though. I appreciate that.
We're grandparents. And because we love that little boy, we love that little boy.
You just want to squeeze his little face.
I haven't even seen him today, and it's just killing me.
I know,
you got to spend time with him. But
I did.
Anyway, because we love him, we don't let him do everything that he wants to do.
Right. Just like you do your kids.
Well, it's kids, it's grandkids. The reason God called himself a father is because that is the one way without a seminary education where we can truly begin to understand God. I love my kids. I would do anything for them.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let them get away with murder because I love them.
Right.
And the gospel is that unique tension of loving unconditionally as a father loves a child, as a mother loves a child, and yet loving them so much that you want to raise them right.
And loving them enough to not hold a grudge.
Yeah. There's a huge difference between being mad at your kid and disciplining your child.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you should never discipline when you're mad. That's a whole other issue.
Yeah, that's another podcast, but also true.
So the first part of this is just simply only one gospel. There are other gospels. There is another gospel, and it's when you add to or take away from the gospel as we know it. Verses 8 and 9, I just simply title this paragraph, Even If We, because this is mind-boggling to me. Whenever we think about this, out there, that teacher might do that, or that church might do that, or that ministry might do that. But listen to verse 8. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. This is the part I shared with our location pastors, that don't get so uppity and don't think so much of yourself that you think you're excluded from this. Yeah. I mean, because if you let the devil whisper in your ear, or you think you get innovative and have an idea and you add to or take from, here's what he's saying. We've preached to you the gospel. And if we come back and we change that, then don't listen to us. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important because he's saying we're policing ourselves as well. Mm-hmm. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Paul is so singularly focused.
He
like
is.
the whole the whole book of Galatians was like, guys, get it together. You cannot listen to this nonsense. This is not the gospel.
And the word that we see twice in these two verses, it says, if that happens, let him be accursed. At the end of it, and as we have said before, so I now say again, if anyone is preaching you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. Now, the word accursed in Greek is pronounced...
Is it anathema?
Very good.
Very
good, yes. It's anathema. And, that doesn't get tossed around a lot in Baptist circles, but I grew up with Catholic friends. And when somebody was excommunicated or kicked out of the church, they were anathemized.
Wow.
They were accursed is what that was. And that's the severity of what Paul's talking about here. It is to be accursed. It is to be anathemized. So there is another gospel. And if you are guilty of teaching that other gospel, even if it's me, he says, let them be anathema. That's a big statement.
Yeah, no kidding.
And what that does is it puts you in a box, and it's a good box to say, this is orthodoxy, this is truth, this is what God's word says, and even I, as your teacher or leader, don't get to play around with that. So if that's the case for me, then that's the case for everybody.
Yeah.
Amen?
Wow. So you said right at the beginning that there is no other gospel. Right. And that's what he says, that it's not the good news at all. It just pretends to be. And then you said there is another gospel. But what you're saying is that it's just a manipulation of the gospel. It's not actually another gospel. Yeah,
the Zoroastrianism, or you go to another faith, Hinduism, different variety. They have 10,000 gods that, or Buddhism. They all have their own version of what they would say is the good news, whether it's getting to nirvana or reincarnation or something like that. But what Paul is specifically talking about is Christianity perverted and distorted.
Gotcha.
So when he says another gospel, he's literally talking about Jesus, but Jesus light or Jesus complex.
Gotcha.
And those are inappropriate, and they are not gospels.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. I think it's good. So 2 out of 3 so far. Another gospel, and that is meant that happens when you add to or take away. But even if you got to watch yourself and understand we're not just pointing fingers out there, but keep your own heart right to the truth and simplicity of the gospel. Then verse 10, for am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. What we have here is that we need to check the motivations of the teachers, right? And it's not that, like, we get a paycheck from the church. This is where we earn our living here. And Paul teaches that, worker deserves their wages and support all that. But what is the motivation? Is it to get a platform, to become famous, to become powerful, to become the largest church, to become an influencer, all those things? He says, if I'm seeking the approval of man in doing this, then I'm wrong. Why? Because if I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. This is, I think, the incredible tension of what it is to be in ministry, if you're on my side of things as a pastor or minister, but it's also the incredible tension of every person who is looking for leadership as a member of a congregation, because what it is the tension of saying that I want to listen to them and I want them to lead, but I also need to make sure that they're doing it for the right reasons.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so to have that balance, and that's always hard, because what happens is people, we see it in culture all the time, put somebody up on a pedestal, they're going to fall off.
Yeah.
We don't want to put pastors on a pedestal. We don't want to put leaders on. The only person who goes on a pedestal is Jesus and Jesus alone.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But what we do want to do is say, we want to follow you because God's given you a calling to do this. And yet, part of our responsibility is to make sure that what we're hearing from you is only the gospel.
Yep.
And what we see in you is only a desire to lead him forward.
Yeah.
And you need a heart check. I don't think there's ever been anybody who had it right every single day of their life.
Well, Jesus.
Well, yeah, he always gets the exception, right?
Right. He is the only human exception. Yes.
So you and I, we need to check our motives, check our heart on a regular basis. And it's just a harsh reality of the world that we live in. No person is perfect. And because of that, it means that we are allowed to pray through and lovingly check the motivations of those that we're following. And the reality is that sometimes we get off track.
Yeah. I mean, as you check others, make sure that we are checking our hearts first before we're making sure others are doing what they should do.
And if you're asking the question, well, what if there is a problem? What if I'm seeing that somebody needs to? Well, the very next CPXL episode, we're going to go later in the book of Galatians, and I call it Help a Brother Out.
Okay.
Make sense?
Preview.
That's right. Well, but between now and then, it's time for us to enjoy our CPXL challenge. And for us, with a lesson like this, let's make sure that we know what the gospel is so that we know when we're hearing something that isn't the gospel. It's the counterfeit law, right? Always know what it says, and don't worry about the fakes. Just know what the truth is.
Yeah.
You focus there, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yep.
Get in the gospel. Get in the word. Listen to the music. Listen to the sermons. Get it done. It'll be great. Many blessings on you. We'll see you soon on another episode of CPXL.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of CPXL. We hope that you have been challenged to go further and grow deeper. If this podcast has been a help to you, we ask that you would like, comment, and share on whatever platform you use. And if you would like to access additional resources, go to crosspointchurch.com. We will see you again soon on another edition of CPXL.